Coming up on today's show, we're chatting with the celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. While you might be getting ready for the 4th of July festivities, did you know that today, July 2nd, is the real Independence Day? Our next guest says this is the true 250th birthday of our nation, and he's here to tell us why. Please welcome via Zoom celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. Good morning, Raffi.
Hey, good morning. And you know, I'm ready for the semi-quincentennial. I even brought you a set of glasses I thought was more your style, so we could join in.
Thank you. I would take them if I could, and you just gave our viewers their vocab word of the day. So you look ready to go. Let's start off with our first question. How is July 2nd the real Independence Day?
Well, let's walk through this series of events that happens leading up to, July 2nd and July 4th. So about a month prior, on June 7th, you have a guy named Richard Henry Lee, who's from Virginia in Continental Congress, and he introduces this bill that says simply that the colonies ought to be free and independent states. That's the terms that is used in that resolution. And as a result of that introduction of that bill on June 7th, there is multiple committees that are formed for the three parts that bill had just within a few days. One of them is to declare to the world that we're declaring independence. Number two is to go seeking a foreign alliance. Later, that would happen with France, for example, most chiefly. And then number three, it is to form a confederation between the 13 colonies, because at this point, they're separate colonies. They're not united under kind of one umbrella, right? Well, this is pretty radical stuff. A bunch of delegates say, this is a little premature. We need to go back to our colonies and get instructions for how to vote on this. So what does Congress do, or Continental Congress? They take a break. They say, okay, let's do a recess. We'll come back on July 1st. They take off for 3 weeks. One of the committees that begins to work is the Committee of Five, as it's known, led by Thomas Jefferson, on the Declaration of Independence. Ben Franklin's on that committee. John Adams is on that committee. And over the course of those weeks, he begins to draft the Declaration of Independence. So we come back on July 1st and take a vote this time, as there's been kind of behind the scenes work to build a coalition. Delegates are going and getting instructions from their states. And on July 1st, there's a vote. Only 9 states vote for it out of 13. So 2 against, 1 no vote, and 1 was split. Because remember back then, each state gets 1 vote, so your delegates actually can split. And so then there's a vote again the next day on July 2nd after some more work. And this time, 12 out of 13 approve it. 1 is a no vote, waiting for a further instruction. They would eventually come around to get all 13. By the way, that was New York. Who knew that New Yorkers are actually slow during the Revolution? Because you think of New Yorkers as moving fast.
Oh,
right?
Of course.
So at that point, Continental Congress says, all right, this is now in effect. So we're going to accept the Declaration of Independence, make some edits on July 3rd, and they release it on July 4th for the printing. But the actual vote to approve independence is on July 2nd, exactly today, 250 years ago. That's when we actually gain independence. That's when we agree to the resolution that Lee introduced. It's announced to the world on July 4th. You could argue on July 8th, because on the 4th it gets approved for printing, the Declaration of Independence, which was not the one with the signatures on it, by the way, just printed. And goes out on July 8th. It begins to get read publicly throughout the colonies.
Well, you just led me to my next question. We all know the famous signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's where we get your John Hancock, right? Did that happen on July 2nd or July 4th?
None of the above. It happened mostly on August 2nd, believe it or not. So a bunch of the delegates, after they approved, kind of like went home and went to the States and came, and then eventually we're going to come back and sign the engrossed document, which is the copy, which is the like official one that we see if you go to the National Archives, for example, on display. Believe it or not, a couple of guys didn't sign it until 1777, a year later, when they came back to Philadelphia. And it's possible, we believe, but we're not certain, that there's one that was as late as 1781. So it was kind of a series of things, but the biggest one was on August 2nd. That scene that you see in the famous painting, of course, I have it right here, actually, too, right on the $2 bill.
Yeah.
The back. You're seeing it right there on your screen right now. That famous painting right there is a moment that never happened. And here's a $2 bill with Thomas Jefferson
Wow.
on the front, and the same scene of the painting that you saw earlier on your screen right there. It never actually happened the way that we portrayed there, but that's not the
Right.
painter's fault. If you go to the Capitol today in the Rotunda, you'll see that painting, and underneath it, it's labeled. It says July 4th, Independence Hall. Well, that's a label we added, and it's incorrect. The painter never
Oh,
intended to portray July 4th. The painter simply called it the Declaration of Independence. That's all he called it. He didn't give a particular date on it.
wow.
And he wasn't intending to portray a moment. He was intending to portray the people. In fact, he went to such lengths for accuracy that he went looking for how he could find the likenesses, accurate images of the people. He's painting this a few decades later. And he's looking for actual images of these people and only putting them in if he had an accurate, like not a photo, but an image that he could base that person's likeness
Oh.
on. So those he didn't have, he didn't include. We also don't have a complete record of everyone who was there for the vote because they voted by state. So we don't 100% know.
Oh.
And another thing that's really fascinating is that he inserted people that we know weren't there and a couple of people that even opposed independence because he wanted to portray that this was a group effort, there was debate, and these were some of the major figures involved in these major moments. So it's a little bit kind of more artistic take that we then took to take literally, if you will.
Well, Raffi, I knew none of this. I am shocked. And my last question for you, if you and I were founding fathers, which date would we technically celebrate?
Well, you just saw there's a bunch of different dates, right? And
Right?
what's funny is, so John Adams, part of the Committee of Five, argued for July 2nd. He said
Okay.
July 2nd will be the day Americans celebrate, just like I think. However, you turned out to be wrong. We celebrate the 4th. 1 year after the Declaration of Independence in 1777, the founders didn't even realize it had been a year. Someone had to remind them. They were kind of busy
No
fighting
way.
the war.
No.
You know, I think about it.
Well,
So it was
let it
something that
slide.
later came on to be agreed upon in the years after the Revolution. But during the Revolution, it's not very clear, although they did celebrate one time on the 4th with a big dinner at a tavern having a feast. It looked something like this back in the 18th century.
Oh,
Lots
that's
of meat,
awesome.
lots of alcohol.
Well, I'm glad to see we celebrate it the same way 250
That's
years
right.
later.
Yeah, grilling and beer.
And of course, decked out in your red, white, and blue. I'm not sure they had glasses like yours, but I think they would
No.
rock it nonetheless.
That's right. They did some pretty crazy stuff. And fireworks, by the way, even back in 1777, a year later, they did do fireworks in Philadelphia.
How cool
So
is
carry the
that?
tradition on.
Well, thank you so much, Raffi, for joining us this morning.
Thank you all. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. Stay
And
safe
second.
out there.